Welcome to the third episode of the Hindsight and Hottakes podcast. I'm your host, Connor Gisclair. I'm here with a new guest this week. He's been a great friend of mine for over 15 years. He's the definition of a football guy, and he's a current student at LSU, Taylor Plaisance. It's NFL Combine Week. Before we get into our first mock draft of the 2025 season, let's talk about some players that stood out as well as some guys that disappointed in this week's Combine. It's time for 2020 Vision.
2020 vision, seeing all the angles, fight for the moment, grasp it like tangles. No time to falter, gotta keep pacing. Eyes straight ahead, heart racing.
Obviously, there are many winners in this week's Combine that raised their draft stock. But first, Taylor, who are some of your losers?
In my opinion, my number one loser is Ohio State quarterback Will Howard. He just missed several receivers very blatantly during his throwing events. This even prompted Shedeur Sanders to tweet out in his defense that he was throwing to receivers he wasn't used to, but other quarterbacks, it didn't seem to bother them. Like Brady Cook and Jackson Dart, they had an excellent showing out for this.
I think Brady Cook, especially after his 40 time, he really raised his draft stock. Jackson Dart, obviously, has been a pretty much low first round, top second round guy throughout the whole draft process. So we'll see what happens with Will Howard. Let's move into your second guy that disappointed this week.
My second loser is Malachi Starks. He was just the number one safety going into the Combine. Everyone thought he'd be the number one safety off the board, but after his measurements, he dropped down a lot in my opinion. 33-inch vert. He was tied for the third worst vertical out of all safeties. He had a 4.5 40, which was kind of decent for a safety, but in my opinion, the vert just dropped him all the way down.
As a safety, you have to be able to jump up for footballs, and obviously he didn't do a great job of that. I know going into the draft, at some points he was a top 15 pick. At some points, after this Combine, he's lucky to be drafted in the first round completely.
Yeah, compared to the South Carolina safety, Eman Wari, he almost got a whole foot extra on his vert. So I feel like he's not even considered the number one safety in the draft anymore.
I agree with that. So, one more loser that stood out to you this week for the Combine.
My third loser is Oregon receiver Tez Johnson. At just 5'10", 155, he is very small compared to most of these guys. But he had one of the slowest 40 times out of everyone. A 4.51 and you're that small. I feel like if you're that small, you're going to get thrown around. So you need to be quick. And it's just not going to cut it. He needs to do something about this.
Obviously at Oregon, how that offense ran, it wasn't a lot of 50-50 balls. It was kind of just, over the middle, yards after reception plays. In the NFL, that doesn't happen. So, that was our losers. Next, we'll go into my winners of the week.
Who were some of your winners for this week, Connor?
First off, Texas A&M DN Shamar Stewart showed out this week. I mean, his athleticism was off the charts. He had a 40-inch vertical jump, a 4.59 40 time. I mean, you got to think, this dude's 6'5", 267. The dude's an athletic freak. Also, he was given a perfect 10 for the RAS rating. This is the highest possible score a player can achieve. You might say, what's RAS? This stands for Relative Athletic Score. So, one of the knocks on him, he wasn't super productive during his time at Texas A&M, but, I mean, you have a combine like this, NFL scouts will notice.
He also had multiple other threats on his defense that could have taken away from his stats. Like Nick Scorton was honestly the biggest beast on that defense.
I agree with that.
But Shamar Stewart, very raw athleticism. I think he could get it done at the next level.
I think, especially in today's age, scouts care more about, 40 time, size-wise. How are you going to be able to last in the league? I think after this showing, this dude definitely boosted his draft stock.
100%.
So, my second winner is Kentucky cornerback Maxwell Hairston. This dude showed out for the 40 time, running a 4.28. He also logged a 40-inch vertical jump. And according to scouts, he was also very fluent in on-field drills. I really imagine he could be a middle first-round pick. Other than Will Johnson, I think he's the second best corner available. Taylor, what you think?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think other than Will Johnson, he's the only other top corner that really shows out on his film and obviously the combine.
We were going through his film earlier, some of his highlights. I mean, he looked like he belonged on that. He looked like he belonged on that field. He was silky smooth on all the drills. He got up for all the balls. I think the dude's going to be a beast at the next level.
100%.
My third winner, another in the secondary, South Carolina safety, Nick. Make sure I'm saying this correctly. Nick Emanwari, the 6'3", 220-pound safety out of South Carolina. Again, this dude showed out with the athleticism. Ran a 4.38 40, an 11-foot 6-inch broad jump, 43 inches in the vertical jump. That's almost an NFL record. The NFL record's 46. I think he can be one of the top. He could be the top safety in this draft.
I think after Malachi Stark showing out, he is definitely the top safety in this draft. Just like his build, 6'3", 220, doing all that. It's just off the charts and unheard of.
You don't see a lot of guys. You don't see a lot of safeties even 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", very athletic. Played at the top level, the SEC. I mean, this dude's going to be a stud at the next level.
Yeah, I even heard some scouts saying he was the DK Metcalf of the secondary, just relating to his frame and his athleticism.
I mean, DK Metcalf, obviously one of the best NFL combine performances ever. Anytime you're, said in the same sentence as a guy like that, you're going to be a high draft pick. So, that was some of our winners and losers from this week's draft. Next, we'll talk about a couple guys from LSU that performed well in this week's draft combine. So, Taylor, who's one guy from LSU that stood out to you?
Honestly, I knew this guy would show out at the combine. Mason Taylor, just phenomenal performance. This is a quote from the NFL Draft Network. Mason Taylor did not participate in athletic testing at the NFL Combine, but his on-field workout was smooth and effortless. Taylor was by far the most impressive tight end prospect in the gauntlet drill, showcasing elite ball skills.
Obviously, Mason Taylor, 3-year starter at LSU, probably the best tight end LSU's ever had. I expect big things for him at the next level.
Oh yeah, definitely one of the most polished route runners as a tight end I've ever seen. It just looks effortless as a man of that size doing what he's doing.
Obviously, you go to LSU, you've got to see some great Mason Taylor moments. For your time at LSU, what was your favorite Mason Taylor moment? I know that's hard.
I'd say my favorite Mason Taylor moment, I would say moments during the Ole Miss game this year. His few catches at the last drive of the Ole Miss game to lead us down to that game-tying touchdown.
By Kyron Lacey, another...
Yes. Controversial LSU athlete. But I did say that whole sequence of events, just Nussmeier rolling out, just keep on throwing to Mason Taylor. He was always open somehow. Even after a war of a game, he was just burning defenders.
I feel he'll be any NFL team's that security blanket. It's a third down. You need 5-6 yards. You find that guy.
Yes, you know he will get open, and you know he's gonna catch it.
I can count on my hands how many drops he had.
Yeah,
for his 3 years at LSU.
I think I saw him drop a single pass that was very crucial this year, maybe, if even.
And obviously he had a very talented quarterback. Hopefully wherever he goes, he'll have that same talent. So one guy that stood out for me for LSU was offensive tackle Will Campbell. So one of the knocks on Will Campbell was his arm size, only measuring 32 and 5/8 inches, and that comes out to a wingspan of 77 and 3/8 inches. The average wingspan in the NFL is actually 82 inches. So this leads to many experts believing that he will be shifted to the guard position if he's drafted. Also, He has the shortest if he does get drafted, he'd have the shortest wingspan in the entire NFL. For offensive tackles, we'll see what happens. Tackle, guard. When asked about that, this was what Will Campbell had to say. You can go look at my tape, and there's not one play on there that when I get beat, you can say, oh, that's because he has shorter arms. So, Will Campbell, obviously, all SEC talent for the Tigers for 3 years. He really came in as a freshman and just locked down that position for 3 years. What's your takeaways on Will Campbell?
I think specifically at the Combine, Will Campbell allowed people getting a sub-5 40-yard.
Which is very impressive for his size.
Yes.
Doesn't happen too often.
300 pounds plus doing that, 6 foot, almost 6. It's just crazy.
I think, obviously, talking about draft position, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. Probably top 10, in my opinion.
Me personally, I think top 5.
Top 5, wow. We'll get into the draft a little bit later. But going into NFL news, obviously, former LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels got a bolster to his offense when the Commanders traded for Deebo Samuel of the 49ers. Taylor, what are your thoughts on that trade?
I was definitely not expecting this. Especially, it seemed last year that the 49ers did not want to help out the Commanders at all. With Brandon Ayuk wanting to go there.
Literally, Ayuk coming out publicly and saying, I want to be traded.
Yeah. But they just did not entertain it at all. But then they go around and trade arguably their better receiver.
I agree with that.
For less than the Cowboys got. The Cowboys for Jonathan Mingo?
Jonathan Mingo, a guy that, the dude's barely seen the field.
Yeah. 4th round pick for Jonathan Mingo. 5th for Deebo Samuel, who is arguably still in his prime. I don't think he's fallen off yet. Just a few injury issues here and there.
Yeah,
But that's arguably how the 49ers were using him. Just all over the field, running back, returner, receiver.
Everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, for a 5th round pick, you're not finding a guy with that talent in the 5th round nowadays. 1 in a million, but I think Jaden Daniels with that offense now, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, you have a good running back. You still have a tight end and Zach Ertz going, getting up there in age, but that's going to be a very scary offense this upcoming season.
It's also a very, very talented tight end class going into this draft. So, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, I see the Commanders getting a tight end.
I agree with that. I think, whoever they would draft, whatever young guy, can step right under Zach Ertz, learn from a bona fide vet. The dude's been around the league, done that. Great tight end. I think Commanders going to be scary next year.
Oh, yeah.
So, that was a couple of LSU guys that participated in the draft combine, as well as some local NFL news.
With that being said, let's get into our next segment, Monday Morning Quarterback.
So, let's get into our first official 2025 mock draft for the season. Titans, number 1 pick. I think they go Cam Ward here. The arm talent is elite. Pocket presence, elite. I know he gets criticized for being nonchalant or whatever, but the dude has an elite arm for the next level. Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a good projection because the Titans, I really, really do not see them going back with Will Levis. After 2 years, I don't think they could even take a third and let their fans speak for them. I don't think their fans would even want a 3rd year with that guy.
I feel even Will Levis, obviously there's so many teams in the NFL that are quarterback hunting. You could probably give that dude away for a 4th, 5th round pick in the going market. So Taylor, who's your number 2 overall pick?
I think number 2, Browns. I think they'd take Abdul Carter. Even after this news about him needing surgery, the Browns really need an edge rusher because Myles Garrett is almost 100% out of there. He wants to compete now. Browns definitely are not competing now.
Man, Abdul Carter, that dude in the playoffs, I mean, he skyrocketed his draft projections. I mean, I was seeing things that he wouldn't even go top 15, goes to the playoffs, shows out for Penn State, skyrockets to probably the best overall talent in the entire draft.
Yeah, he's just explosive, and playoffs against like the best talent in all of college this year, he was just unstoppable.
He would just, I remember against Boise State, for the first half, every single play he looked like he was shot out of a cannon. That's what these NFL scouts are looking for. Despite the injury, I mean, which he, apparently it came out that it was reported that he played with it, throughout his whole time. We'll see what happens with the injury, if he gets the surgery or not, or he plays through it. We'll see what happens. So third, Giants. Giants obviously still need another piece offensively. You could say they go quarterback, but right here, I have them going Travis Hunter. I mean, the dude's, it's been said that he's the best wide receiver and the best cornerback in this class. When you have that at the number 3 spot, I think you have to pull the trigger on that move.
Oh, yeah. I think the Giants, it's pretty obvious Travis Hunter's going to go top 5. I would be very surprised if he'd fall out of top 5. But the Giants definitely, they still need a quarterback, but there's going to be a lot of quarterback talent in second, third round, like Jackson Dart or Brady Cook, as we mentioned earlier. They looked pretty good at the combine, so I think they find their guy there.
If not, they could go the veteran route, get crosstown quarterback Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Travis Hunter, Malik Neighbors in that offense, that would be electric.
Yeah, if Aaron Rodgers can't succeed with that group, he should definitely call it.
I mean, he didn't succeed with Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, but that's a story for another time.
Oh, yeah.
So, next pick, Patriots. Where do you think they go?
Like I said earlier, I saw this guy going top 5. Well, you said top 10. I think the Patriots at number 4 go Will Campbell.
I mean, you've seen this dude for a couple years now. What's some things that stood out about him?
In loud stadiums, a few false starts, but I think that's just him trying to learn Nussmeier's cadence compared to Jaden Daniels, who he was so used to, obviously.
Agreed.
But Will Campbell, a lot of people are saying the stuff about his arm size and stuff, but he competed against the best of the best for the past 3 years, even as a freshman, as like 19 years old, against the best edge rushers in the SEC, some of the best edge rushers now in the NFL, and he just dominated. He just never gave up sacks often at all. I think he gave up 2
throughout his entire
LSU career, maybe 2, if even.
I mean, those battles with Alabama, even earlier this year, Dylan Stewart from South Carolina, I mean, probably one of the highest graded freshmen of all time. I mean, he locked them down the entire game.
Neutralized. And the comfortability of Nussmeier in the pocket this year, it's like he was never even worrying about his left side.
He could just drop back and look for an open guy. So, obviously, Will Campbell at 4. Next, Jaguars. I think they bolstered that defensive line. They go best D tackle available, Mason Graham. Obviously, dealt with injuries this year. Didn't play a lot, but, I mean, you go back to when Michigan played Alabama. I mean, that dude was unstoppable. Taylor, what you think?
Yeah, Mason Graham, he wasn't at the combine, obviously, because of injuries, but I think Jaguars definitely need a big defensive guy. And honestly, I don't even remember the last good D tackle that the Jaguars have ever had.
Not off the top of my head.
In recent memory, at least. But yeah, I think it's a good pick for them.
Okay, that was pretty quick. Next, Raiders. They finally get their franchise quarterback, Shedeur Sanders. Taylor, what you think about that trade, that move?
I think it's definitely the right move. Getting Shedeur Sanders at number 6. Raiders, they have not had their guy. Even with Derek Carr, that was not their guy, and he was there for 8 years?
Long time and
Long
never
time.
got it done.
Went to the playoffs a single time, got a single win. I mean,
still don't know how that happened.
Against the Chargers, I think. It's not saying much, but Raiders, Raiders fans, maybe the last successful quarterback was Ken Stabler. That was a very long time ago. They need their guy. They need support from their fans before they're just honestly moved to another city again.
Obviously, they were in on Matthew Stafford. It was reported that they gave him a higher deal than what the Chargers gave him, but obviously Matthew Stafford, I mean, probably going to be a Hall of Famer. He was comfortable where he was. I think with Shadur Sanders, you get a dude with great pocket presence, not super mobile, but you get a winner. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I think Tom Brady's looking for that bona fide quarterback. I think he gets it with the number 6 pick in this year's draft.
Okay, with the number 7 picks, who do you have the Jets picking up?
I have them going Shamar Stewart. Obviously, we talked about this dude earlier. Athletic freak. Had the combine of a lifetime. I really think after that combine performance, that propels him to be a top 10 pick. And I really think the Jets, defensively, they were one of the worst teams at getting out after the quarterback. You get this guy, again, like we said earlier, he wasn't super productive at Texas A&M, but is the NFL now.
Yeah, I think this is a boomer bust pick right here. He will either be a franchise guy for a long time, or he might wash out in a few years.
I agree with that. But that's a chance you take when you get an athletic freak from the combine. But boomer bust, we'll see. Next, Panthers. Mike Green, edge rusher from Marshall. Taylor, what do you think about that?
Kind of the opposite of Shamar Stewart. His stats at Marshall are just off the charts. I think he was first in sacks.
17 just this year.
Yes. 17 sacks in a year, that's just crazy. And it's not like he was going against very bad talent. It was kind of on par with Marshall, like JMU.
Obviously, he played against Will Howard, had that big sack.
He had a sack against Ohio State, one of the best teams.
And one
obviously,
of the best tackles
the best team this year.
Yes. I think, obviously with these smaller school guys, it's important. You don't see a lot. They get to the top 10 range, but when it happens, they've turned out usually pretty good in past years.
Like, you never know. Like, who else came from Marshall? Randy Moss had, I think, a pretty successful career.
I would say one of the most successful careers. So, we'll see what Mike Green has in store for the Panthers. Next, or New Orleans Saints. Finally, they address the offense. Penn State tight end, Tyler Warren. Taylor, what do you think?
I really like this pick. This is my favorite of all mock drafts for the Saints. They are definitely losing Juwan Johnson. He was all right for us. I just don't think he was an elite tight end. He had the numbers only because everyone else on the team was injured.
And they didn't have in that. Especially that position now you're losing him. You have Foster Monroe. You get a guy like this that carried Penn State throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, the Saints need a big physical threat in the receiving game. Everyone they have now is kind of little. They get knocked around. That's why injuries happen. We need a big guy that can take the hits, won't get injured. Safety blanket, 100%.
I'm just excited to see what he could do in this offense. I know, obviously, the tight end talent this year is very deep, but I really think Tyler Warren's going to be a bona fide stud in this league.
Yeah, I think, obviously, when Rattler was starting for us, he was targeting tight ends a lot. Yes. Safety blanket. I think if Rattler gets the start over Derek Carr at any point in this season, Tyler Warren will be his go-to guy.
I think even Derek Carr having a guy that he could count on those 3rd and 4th down situations going to be very important to this team because that was a big problem, not converting on 3rd and 4th downs. Mm-hmm. When you would finally get to 3rd and 5 and, shorter than that, you would have no go-to guy because everyone was injured.
And they would just launch at 50 yards.
Exactly. And hope for a pass interference, which we would never get.
Nope.
So, next pick, we have the Bears pick swapping with the Colts, going down from 14 to 10. And we say the Colts pick up the best defensive back available, Will Johnson, to help first-year defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. Taylor, what do you think about that pick?
Yeah, I think the Bears, This is very possible because the Bears need offensive line help for Caleb Williams. He was getting killed countless times this year in the pocket. Had no time to throw. Yeah, they got him a lot of weapons offensively. Keenan Allen, Odunze. They had DeAndre Swift in there. Cole Kmet.
Yeah.
One of the best tight ends in the NFL. But he just had no time to get the ball to any of them most of the time. They needed offensive line help, obviously.
And offensive line help, as we see, I mean, it's falling this year. You have Will Campbell, and that's it in the first 10 picks.
That's why I see the Bears going down, trading down for some more assets because, let's be honest, the offensive linemen, they're all kind of like around the same area after Will Campbell. And they all fell to like 15 to 20 range.
I think that's where they'll fall.
So I see the Bears affording to trade down.
Maybe pick up a second or third round pick.
Yeah. Just try to bolster that offensive line as much as possible. But the Colts trading up, try and get Will Johnson because I see Will Johnson disappearing right after 10 instantly, probably with the 49ers.
I think if it's not them, the Colts that trade up, there will definitely be someone that trades up for a guy like Will Johnson. I think, if not Travis Hunter, I think when he was on the field, he was the best cornerback in the country. I think the Colts get their cornerback of the future in Will Johnson. So, that is all we have for our first 10 picks. We'll have another NFL draft special in a few weeks where we'll go through the entire first round. So, that's all we have for today's podcast. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a like and comment your thoughts.
Hindsight's got the view, hot takes cutting through. Join us next time, my friend, where the shouting never ends.